is a hot spot for Bigfoot activity.
Number 1, the cornfield lurker. Some investigations start slow. They ease you in, let you breathe, give you time to settle into the environment. This was not one of them. From the moment Dee stepped onto the remote farmhouse property for Dee's dark adventures, something in the air felt wrong. It was heavy and strange. It was like the field itself was holding its breath and waiting for her to make the first move.
The family who lived there had called her in after weeks of unexplained events. Calm dogs turning aggressive and voices drifting across the yard when no one was outside. The family has seen strange shapes moving through the corn at hours when everything should have been still. They were terrified, convinced something was stalking their home, and Dee came determined to find out what it was.
I don't see deer carrying a bulk in their mouth and bringing it here. But it's a little bulk for what I'm trying to say it is, I guess. Ooh. Get one of my new lights. Check this out. The one's already turned on. Dang. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Look at that.
Night fell fast, and the farmhouse lights faded behind her as she walked toward the massive cornfield. Under the beam of her flashlight, the tall stalks looked less like plants and more like some walls that twisted into a maze without an end. The rows swallowed sound, swallowed light, swallowed every ounce of comfort she tried to hold on to. And that is when it happened, the arrival of the unknown.
Airplane.
Something just jumped into the cornfield just like that. She wanted to believe it was some animal, maybe a deer, but her instincts said otherwise. She could sense something was terribly wrong. She took her first step into the corn, and everything changed. The crunch of her boots broke the silence, but only for a moment. A new quiet settled over the field, deeper than before, like the entire place was listening. Then she spotted it, a pile of corn kernels laid out neatly on the ground. She knew that it was not the house owner. She knew something laid out the pile of corn there, and she was confused about it. She knew that a deer won't carry a bulk in their mouth and bring it there.
More deer droppings. I messed up my leg there. Hang on. Hold on, I'm sorry. Technical difficulty.
It wasn't spilled feed and it wasn't scattered. It was placed or moreover arranged with intention. That alone was strange, but the feeling that hit Dee was even stranger. Someone or something wanted her to notice it.
She bent down to examine it, her flashlight cutting a thin line across the dirt, and that was when she heard it. A howl. It was low and distant. It was not the dogs, or not even close. The family's dogs were restrained on a line. They couldn't reach the field. This sound came from much farther inside the maze of corn.
Dee straightened slowly. The stillness thickened, and that was enough to scare her. The temperature felt like it dropped. Her instincts sharpened into a single message. That is, she was not alone.
She moved deeper. Every few steps, wind was passing through the stalks. At first, it was the kind of sound you could explain away with wind. But the night was calm, and the rustling started following her, shifting with her movements, stopping when she stopped, pressing in just enough to make her question her own breathing. Then came the chirping, which was high-pitched. It was fast and rhythmic. Not like a bird or like an insect, it was more like a kind of communication. It surfaced through the air with purpose, almost circling her in some scary loops.
this, dude. I'm done. I can't. No.
Each pass grew louder, as if whatever was making the noise was closing inch by inch. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered across a row of stalks and she froze. Something moved. It was a shadow. It was upright and smooth, and far too quick to be a person. "Oh my God," she whispered to the camera, and asked, "What did I just see? What did I just see?" "Screw that," in the camera. She backed up, with her heart racing. Her breath became sharp and uneven. She forced herself to follow the tracks the movement seemed to leave behind. What she found next rooted her to the ground.
Corn flattened. It was wide, heavy and not trampled. It was pressed. "Something was laying here," she said quietly. "Something big."
Look, something was laying here. Something big was laying right there.
Before she could investigate further, the sounds around her exploded like it happened before.
Chirping turned chaotic, and the rustling of leaves turned into fast movement. Something large pushed through the stalks nearby. Shapes started to run through her peripheral vision. Every time she turned the light toward them, they vanished. The stalks swayed long after the shadows disappeared, as if whatever hid inside them was still standing just out of reach. The sense of being watched grew unbearable, and it was no longer a suspicion. It was a sense of certainty.
Her light shook and her voice cracked. And that survival instinct that whispers from the back of your mind when things go too far finally screamed at her to leave. Finally, she said, "I'm done. No, 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 no."
No, 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 no.
The cornfield around her seemed to move, the noises growing more aggressive. She stumbled backward, gripping her gear, trying not to break into a full sprint. Every row looked the same. Every direction felt wrong. But she pushed through until the stalks thinned and the open yard finally appeared ahead. When she reached safety, she didn't look back.
The next morning didn't bring answers. It brought questions she couldn't shake. The piles of corn and the tracking noises. The hollow, circling chirps and those shadows, slipping through the stalks with a speed that didn't fit any normal explanation.
Number 2, the green forest disturbance. The Outdoor Gear Review is built on straight talk, field tests, and honest opinions from a man who treats the woods like a second home. Luke, the man himself.
Luke is calm, practical, and not the type to chase monsters who dramatize a night in the mountains. That is exactly why this incident hits so hard. When someone who never studies paranormal ends up scared, you pay attention. And that is what happened this time.
This episode was requested by the viewer of the Outdoor Gear Review. People wanted Luke to return to the place he calls the Green Forest. It is a remote mountain area where he had several odd experiences over 2 years. At the time it happened, he brushed them off, because he knew that strange things happen in the woods.
But when he looked back at the clips and thought through the details, a pattern began to form that he couldn't ignore. He addresses all of this right at the start of the hike.
"Some of you will be excited. Some of you will roll your eyes," he says, "and that's okay." He explains the tree formation he found on one trip, where broken trunks were bent and stacked the same way. It was lined along what looked like a deliberate trail, not storm damage or the work of wind. It looked arranged and deliberate.
This is a viewer-requested episode. that I'm calling the search for Bigfoot. For some, this is going to excite them. For others, they may roll their eyes, and that's okay. Allow me to explain what's taken place and why I'm doing this episode, why it's been requested. And over the last 2 years, I've had numerous odd experiences. The first odd experience began someplace on top of this mountain. I was hiking up and I came across what looked like a trail. And along this trail, all of the trees have been broken and basically like stacked, like leaned in a certain way. It was rather odd.
Then there was the time he started something massive off trail. He never saw it, but heard it explode through the forest with enough force to snap branches. Luke knows deer, and that was not a deer. Whatever it was big.
A few months later, I was hiking to this location. I was coming through the woods and I startled something big. As soon as whatever it was heard me, it burst through the forest. You can hear it breaking limbs and snapping trees as it ran. Whatever it was huge.
Then came the night in the tent where it was raining and the wind was shaking the fabric. Suddenly he heard a single unmistakable grunt right outside. One loud woo, then silence. He still remembers that instant that took his life out. He didn't see anything, didn't hear footsteps. It was just that one sound in the dark.
And last week I came out here for a camping trip. I was inside of the tent, it was raining outside, it was beginning to storm. Basically I was turning in for the night and I heard a grunt and it sounded like this. Woo! One time only, that's it. What was that sound? I have no idea.
Now he was back, not to prove anything, but because people kept asking and because part of him wanted clarity. As he sets off, the temperature sits just above freezing. There was snow clinging to shaded spots and wind rolling across the ridge. His GPS stays on and his pace is steady. The OG Luke who is focused, calm, and observant.
With my experiences out in the woods, out in remote areas, I've never had any sort of experience that I could contribute to being Bigfoot. If you happen to believe in Bigfoot, that's fine, I respect that.
At first, the forest looks like any other winter mountain landscape. Thick brush with icy patches, animal tracks here and there. But the deeper he goes, the stranger things become. He finds a stretch of bark scraped clean from a tree. The mark is high, too high for smaller animals. He thought it would be a black bear, possibly, but as he walks, he finds more. Stripped moss and tall gouges in trunks. Some look natural, while others are too deliberate to ignore. Basically, he was looking for a sign of something or anything. With snow on the ground, if anything's been walking through here, he will see the steps.
I'm looking for a sign of something, anything. There is snow on the ground, that's a good thing. If anything's been walking through here, I'll see the steps.
But he doesn't find steps. Instead, he finds signs. There was bear scat, deer trails, and coyote tracks. It was just normal wildlife and normal forest life. But somehow, the surroundings feel anything but normal.
Something has scraped that off. Something rather large, could have been a black bear. Speaking of the animals that are in this forest, we have black bear, we have some deer, bobcats, the occasional mountain lion, coyotes. And that's about it, really. We have some smaller game, of course, but as far as the big ones, that's it.
Then he reaches the massive rock formation, a mountain of stone rising out of nowhere. Impressive on its own, but in the context of everything else, it adds weight to the feeling that this place holds secrets.
And before he came out there today, he searched this area and Bigfoot reports, and the results were shocking. Apparently, this is a hotspot for Bigfoot, and there were a number of reports.
Before I came out here today, I did a search about this area and Bigfoot, and I'm shocked to say this, but I found a ton of reports. This area apparently is a hot spot for Bigfoot activity.
From anyone else, this might feel like bait. From Luke, it's a genuine admission. He was not claiming anything. He was not selling a story. He is simply saying the evidence surprised him. And that is what makes it unsettling. Number 3, the spirit camp roar. Some campsites welcome you in, whereas Spirit Camp does the opposite. Hidden deep in the Canadian Rockies, it was once a sacred burial ground used by local indigenous communities. Today, even the elders avoid it, and the stories about the place linger in the air like fog. Disturbed graves and voices drifting between the pines only makes the place even more creepy. Silhouettes standing just beyond the firelight was the speciality of Spirit Camp. Travelers who pass the area often describe the same feeling of a quiet warning that something in those woods should not be approached. But one man decided to go anyway. He set out alone, planning to spend 4 days and nights at Spirit Camp with no narration and no commentary. He wanted his footage to speak for itself. No dramatic music and no explanations, just a silent record of whatever might unfold. The first day passed like any normal trip into the backcountry. The forest was calm, with light filtering softly through the branches. There were deers wandering close and birds hopping around the campsite. They all were unbothered by the unfamiliar guest. He cooked his meals, explored the perimeter, and let the camera roll. And the first night brought nothing unusual. The forest settled and everything felt quiet and predictable. The second day was equally uneventful. Hours slipped past as he filmed the landscape. If Spirit Camp held secrets, it wasn't eager to share them. He rested, gathered wood, and prepared for another night alone in a place most people avoided. That night changed everything. Once the sky turned black and the forest wrapped around him, the atmosphere shifted. The firelight cast long shadows that looked too sharp against the trees. The air grew tense, as if the entire forest was bracing for something. Then, without warning, it hit. A roar. Not a normal roar. It was not a bear, not an elk, not anything known to the area. He knew that for sure. It was deep, powerful, and loud enough to shake the camera. The closest comparison people made was a lion's roar, but lions don't live anywhere near the Rockies. It sounded like it came from something huge, something with a chest big enough to send vibrations through the ground. He didn't scream nor run. He sat still with the camera and listening. A few seconds later came the knocking. It was sharp, heavy, and deliberate. Something struck a tree with force. One knock and then came another. Then silence. Wood knocks are often reported in Bigfoot encounters, sometimes described as signals or warnings. Along with the roar, it became something that is hard to ignore. Number 4, the shadow in the trees. Some of the most unsettling encounters aren't dramatic. They don't come with roaring sounds or snapped branches or horrific running through the woods. Sometimes the scariest moments are the ones you don't notice until it's far too late. That is exactly what happened to a father and his young daughter, Leanna, during what should have been an ordinary walk through the woods. The video begins peacefully. The father films casually as Leanna walks a short distance ahead, moving playfully along the trail. Sunlight was filtering through the leaves and birds chirped in the distance. It is the kind of calm, quiet moment families record all the time. There is no tension and no sense of danger, no hint that anything strange is watching from the trees.
But then, in the background, something moves. At first glance, it is subtle, a shadow shifting between the trunks, something large, dark, and upright. The figure was mixed up with the heavy layers of forest, and if you aren't looking directly at it, you would miss it completely. But once you notice the shape, it becomes impossible to ignore.
It looks humanoid, but the proportions are off. It was too tall and too broad, too heavy in the shoulders.
It moves quietly, almost gliding between the trees, as if trying not to make noise. The footstep is long and steady, not the light step of a hiker or the movement of a deer. Whatever it is, it seems to follow the father and daughter from a distance, staying just within the cover of the woods.
They don't notice, and not even a glance. No change in their pace, and no sign that they feel anything behind them. They simply continue their walk, unaware of how close that dark figure is.
It is only later, when the father reviews the footage at home, that everything changes. He pauses the clip and rewinds and watches again. This time, with full attention, he sees it clearly. The figure is not shaped like any person he knows.
Its size alone raises questions. He and his daughter watch the footage over and over, analyzing the outline against the trees, the height, mass, and the way it moves, the way it keeps to the shadows as though it lives there. Some viewers argue it could be a person, maybe a hunter. Maybe someone else is hiking the same trail, but the problem is the scale. The figure appears much larger than any normal human, and the way it walks, with a heavy, deliberate step, matches descriptions of something else entirely.
The one and only Bigfoot.
The resemblance is hard to ignore. Broad shoulders, long arms, and that tall frame points to a Bigfoot. A smooth, powerful step that covers ground quickly without making much sound. The kind of movement often described in eyewitness accounts that never seem to have proof. Until now. The father and Leanna admit they are both fascinated and unsettled by what they captured. They think back to the walk, realizing how close they might have been to something they didn't even know was there. If they hadn't recorded video, the moment would have slipped into memory as just another peaceful day in the woods. Instead, it became something much stranger. The clip doesn't confirm anything. It doesn't solve the mystery, but adds one more piece to a puzzle that has been growing for decades. A puzzle made of shadows, sightings, and stories told around campfires. And out of all of them, this one feels especially chilling because the encounter was silent, hidden, and almost gentle. Which means one thing. If something was out there watching them, it chose to stay unseen. Number 5. The night the woods warned them. Some forests feel wild and others feel ancient. But the one Jerry, better known as Jerry Bear, returned to with his wife Tiffany, felt like it was watching them. For Jerry, this was not unfamiliar ground. He had camped here before while filming for his YouTube channel Exploring with Bear, where he ventured into remote, uneasy places searching for the mysterious and unexplained. But this time it was different. This time he wasn't alone, and the forest seemed intent on reminding them of that. As they drove in, Jerry began sharing stories from his previous visit, including the night his tent had been violently torn apart.
Where psychopaths have attacked before. That was like a year and a half ago, though. This is where the tent that got mangled of mine, and I had to get a new tent and everything. This is where that happened.
You said we were going somewhere safer.
Well, it's been a year and a half, so that's a long time. But time heals all wounds. That's a long time. You know, what's the chances of another psychopath showing up tonight?
He still didn't know whether it was an animal, a person, or something far stranger. Tiffany shot him a look, hinting this was not the safer spot he promised. And before they even reached their campsite, the forest delivered its first warning. 2 massive trees bent unnaturally across the trail. To Jerry, this was not just fallen timber. In Sasquatch lore, bent trees are often viewed as markers or more like territorial warnings left by something large and intelligent. Whether myth or not, the sight of them instantly set both of them on edge.
Did another thing for you earlier. I came out here, I knew this place is out in the middle of nowhere. It's probably not being used and it's gonna be all overgrown. So, and I'm glad I did, because now it's night. So I had to remove like 2 trees out of the road. And then, oh, wait till you see these bends. So one of the signs for Sasquatch is, we'll have to look for more, but bent trees, weirdly bent trees. And that's right by the campus. It was like something was trying to block the entrance with all the trees going across and then the 2 bent trees. So wait till you see it, I'll show it to you. But it's so pretty interesting right off the bat.
Once camp was set, they tried to keep the mood light. Tiffany admired the lakeside view. Jerry opened his love box, proudly showing off a stash of snacks meant to comfort them through the night. But beneath the joking and laughter, there was tension. Jerry kept drifting into stories about strange sounds caught on camera during past trips, about leaving an apple in the woods and hearing something approach it in the darkness. He didn't sound like a man repeating campfire tales. He sounded like someone who had heard something he couldn't explain.
But when night finally fell, the real unease began. The first sign was small. The car's lights flickered despite being completely off. No movement, no keys in the ignition. Just a sudden, unexplained flash. Then came the gunshot. A single, sharp crack echoed through the forest. It was close enough to be unsettling, far enough to leave them unsure of who or what caused it. Tiffany immediately froze, and her fear was pretty justified. Jerry, usually the fearless explorer, went quiet.
Who fires a gun deep in the woods at nearly midnight? Could it be a hunter, a drunk camper, or maybe a warning, or someone else entirely?
Oh, come on.
Just a gunshot.
Oh my gosh, no.
Oh, it's what, 11?
No.
Is it midnight yet? It's really late actually right now.
Who shoots a gun at 11 o'clock at night?
That's what just crossed my mind when I heard it. Like, it is awfully late for that. Maybe it was a firework. It's close to the 4th. Or psychopath. They're out here.
Earlier that day, they had also found strange debris deep in the woods. It was an old, half-buried satellite dish, scattered fence pieces, objects far from any home or trail. It was as if someone had once lived out here or hidden something out here. And the more they explored, the more unnaturally bent trees they found. They were twisted in the same direction, as if shaped intentionally. The deeper the night grew, the more the couple's humor faded. Tiffany's voice trembled, and Jerry's tone shifted from upbeat to quiet, serious, almost cautious. This was not the fearless urban explorer confronting abandoned hospitals or caves. This was a man who knew the forest well enough to recognize when it didn't want him there. There were no monsters on camera, no dramatic chase, just the creeping realization that something in those woods, whether human, animal, or something else, wanted to be left alone. And as thousands of viewers later agreed, that quiet, suffocating forest felt far more real than any jump scare. Whatever haunted that forest, whatever bent those trees, whatever fired that shot, it was enough to make the couple decide that some places weren't meant to be explored twice. Drop your theories, your thoughts, and even your own stories in the comments. And if you love exploring the strange and unexplained, check out the other compilations waiting for you. Encounters, disappearances, trail cam mysteries, all of it is lined up and ready. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below if you've ever witnessed anything you still can't explain.